When a lot of us were kids in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, we were used to really big toys, big play sets, big vehicles, and toy lines that were centered around these giant bottom shelf items. In fact, some of them, like the USS Flag, was so big that it was actually designed to only fit under a child's bed. And that was because, yeah, it was enormous. In fact, while the USS Flag makes a great floaty in a pool, it actually was never really intended to be purchased. It was really just a beacon to draw you into the G.I. Joe aisle. I mean, obviously, some people were going to buy it, but the marketing tactic behind it was to draw you into the aisle. Well, one brand that did a lot of big items that were intended to be played with was Star Wars. And every time there was a new movie, and I'm talking about, the original trilogy, the good one, a new vehicle was created. Sometimes they looked like hamburgers, sometimes they looked like giant dogs. Other times they were big three-winged spaceships. Either way, they were cool. Heck, sometimes the ships that were big were ones that we barely recognized from the film, but they made a great version of the Goodyear blimp. Either way, this tradition continued in Power of the Force 2 when Star Wars was relaunched in 1995 by Hasbro/Kenner, which were now one company, and following the same trend as the earlier waves or line in the 1980s, vehicles were reissued each year to have a bottom of the shelf item, and the big ones like the Falcon and the AT-AT, or AT-AT as we called them, well, they were even redone a few times in the line. Now, we usually always had a giant Millennium Falcon to buy at retail, and that's not so much true these days. In fact, while Star Wars is at retail, and even though there's a lot of blank space at retail, there isn't space for something like a giant Millennium Falcon, or, as other people have said, a giant Razor Crest. So I made a video recently talking about why things like the Galaxy's Edge Disney branded Falcon could work at retail and the Razor Crest couldn't. But I've gotten a lot of questions about this in the comment section, so I thought I'd make another video. In fact, that's the video that you happen to be watching right now.
When will then be now? Soon.
Alright, so why aren't we getting giant Star Wars spaceships at retail anymore? Well, there are 3 actual big reasons why, so let's dive in. Reason number 1, space! I mean, not outer space, I'm talking about aisle space. And yes, I know that a lot of aisles are empty right now, but that's not because there's room for a giant spaceship or a giant playset. Planograms are created years in advance, and they're done very scientifically, and you have to sort of sell in your brand in order to get that space. So even if there is empty space because of shipping issues, you can't just kind of plug in a giant spaceship, even if the tooling is already available. Because there's the question of where does a retailer put it? Yes, there might be, empty spaces, there may be an end cap that's half full, but you can't just put any item there. They all have to be arranged ahead of time, and it's part of how the toy industry works with selling. There's also the question of the big item aisle. Target and Walmart have these, and they even have tickets where employees can go in the back and get the item for you. This is very similar to things like televisions. But the thing is, these items, a lot of them are outdoor play items, or even the televisions, well, they have something that giant spaceships don't have, which is huge sales velocity. Velocity is the number of units sold per day. Something like toilet paper has a huge velocity. Large action figures, not so much. And I know this from experience because I've actually worked on them. I've been in the toy industry consistently for the last 20 years. I never left. Even after I left Mattel in 2014, I went on to work for Jakks Pacific for several years, and the big line that I worked on, no pun intended, was Big Figs. And the huge obstacle Big Figs had at retail was finding a place for them. Sure, the 20-inch figures could easily fit on shelf, but the 31-inch figures had their challenges, and when you upgraded to the 48-inch figures, the challenges only increased. Again, no pun intended, because there really wasn't a place for them. But the thing is, they weren't really meant to sell. They were kind of like the USS Flag. Yeah, it's great when they actually do sell, but they were there to draw kids and collectors into the aisle. They were kind of sort of beacons calling you. Now, obviously, yes, it's great when they sold, but retailers require items to have a place, a home at retail, and they wound up using these toys more in sales displays before they wound up discounting them out for a fraction of the SRP. And it's all because of shelf velocity. Large toys, unless they're outdoor toys, don't sell that quickly or much. The other issue is trust. So let's look at the Star Wars brand. It for a long time has been the gold standard. But that's changed in recent years because the content that's come out in the last 10 years has not sold product the way it did in the past. And, well, to be fair and to be truthful, year after year, the last 10 years or so, all of the new content that's come out has been consistently not the greatest seller at retail, with item after item, category after category, winding up on clearance. And this is what retail does not like to see. They want to see toys be successful, and having to clear out product at a fraction of the cost, while it usually winds up hurting the toy manufacturer more, it's bad for the retailers too. They don't want to see discount aisles not move. So we have this new content, The Mandalorian, right? And we're all saying, oh, but this content is great. And it's got a great new character, and he's everywhere at retail, and I literally mean everywhere. It's pretty much hard to walk down an aisle without seeing Baby Yoda. Yes, I'm still calling him Baby Yoda. What, you want to fight about it? All right, so Baby Yoda, yes, cute, mainstream appeal. And there are other Mandalorian toys too. In fact, there are Razor Crests that are sold at retail, such as this Lego one. So why can't retail take the big one from HasLab? Because they don't want this. They don't want products sitting there stacking up, because then it winds up on the clearance aisle and it hurts the brand. And it hurts the retailer because they're looked at as more of a clearance retailer. It's sort of that whole, fool me once, shame on you. You also have to understand the size of the audience. That's the third thing. And for that, we have to talk about our good friend Venn, as in Venn diagram. The other issue is the MOQ. So when you combine a Venn diagram, such as bananas and lemons, and seeing that they're both yellow fruit, and you can understand that while you have some of A, but not all of it is B, and some of A is not B. That's very important to understand. So with the Razor Crest, yes, a lot of them sold on HasLab, and that's exactly the point. So if you look at a Venn diagram like this, let's say that that blue circle there represents the total number of Razor Crests already sold. And then this purple one represents the MOQ, the minimum number that need to be produced. Well, when you combine them, that area in the middle is much smaller than the MOQ because a huge amount of the demand has already been satiated. A lot of the fans who want a Razor Crest have one. So we're now talking about a smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller section of the audience. And this is why there are large obstacles in the way of having giant items at retail. Even if they're tooled and you don't need to pay for that one-time capital expense, they're still getting a retailer to take the item. And when retailers aren't seeing a high velocity, it's with a brand that's lost a lot of trust, and a large segment of the population already has the item. That's a formula for retailers to say, thank you next. I hope this video helped explain the logistical reasons in the toy industry why large items, even large items that are already tooled, can't just be shipped to retail. Let me know if there's still questions, because I'm always happy to address, and I love being able to give factual information to clear up misconceptions. Subscribe, like, share. It all helps. Thanks for watching.